Okay, let's get started. Hello, everyone. Welcome to our summer check-in for the Cooperative Lakes Monitoring Program. This is uh, a chance for Joe and I to give some tips and ideas to remember and some reminders. But then also, as we go through our short presentation, it's a chance for all of you to ask questions to us. We have this in a meeting style. So what you have here is our instructions for a meeting. As you now know, you can unmute yourself, unlike a webinar kind of thing. So we can hear you speak. Feel free to do that. Also, if you want to write down a question, you can use this chat button down there and you can send us there, and Joe and I will see that along with everyone else, unless you make it to us. If you're having any issues, here's the help desk number to help you out. Also, you can use the chat and see if Joe and I can help as well first. Here we are. My name is Erick Elgin. I am the CLMP Lake Program Manager, so you get a lot of communications from me, a lot of stuff behind the scenes and all the training and fun stuff. And Joe, do you want to give a small intro for yourself?
Sure. Good morning, everybody. Joe Latimore here. I'm sure I've met most of you, if not all of you, before in person, but I'm a faculty member at Michigan State University in the Department of Fisheries and Wildlife, and also serve as the director of MiCorps. So I work on both our lake program, the CLMP, which we're here for today, and also our stream monitoring and stream cleanup program. So if you have interest in stream monitoring, that's something you can always reach out to me about at another time.
And this is a common sight outside. I threw this picture up because if you get Joe and I on our boat, on your boat, we're pulling plants up, we're over the edge grabbing. I think that might be zooplankton down over there with that rope. So uh, this is a common seen during the summer. I'm assuming on many of your boats as well. So we're going to just dive right in. And again, what I want to say is this is informal, so feel free to ask questions as we're presenting as well, just in case we don't want to miss anything, or there's going to be a lengthy chance for that after we're done giving a presentation. So I just wanted to start us off with showing just in one slide our summer monitoring schedule, just to remind you, SecuDisc, we're trying to get a SecuDisc every other week throughout the summer months. If you want to do more, you can. And if you look at your SECI forms, that allows you to collect every week. You'll see that, and just that's great as well. Summer phosphorus, that's coming up for folks who are enrolled there. I think many of you are starting to get your summer phosphorus bottles, but there still might be some on the way. Though that is measured just once, and at the end of August, if you're in the UP, or later in September if you are the rest of the state. Chlorophyll is also once per month. UP lakes are a little different. We'll talk about that in a moment. Temperature and dissolved oxygen is every other week throughout the summer. Again, you can collect more if you would like, but this is what we recommend every other week. We are entering an important time in our lakes for dissolved oxygen and temperature. So make sure those DO meters are functioning, well calibrated. Joe will talk a little bit about those reminders. The plant watch. What's nice about the plant watch and Score the Shore is that there's not one given time. You can conduct the plant watch throughout the summer at any time, and so is Score the Shore. You don't have to get it all done on one day for either of those. You can spread it across through the summer if you'd like, and that's the same for aquatic plant mapping. For the parameters that need a bit more scheduling, we have our summer phosphorus schedule, collection and turn-in schedule, as well as our chlorophyll collection and turn-in schedule. And so, as you probably all know, but when you collect depends, and where you drop off depends on your county. So if you are in St. Joseph County, you'll be going to this location. If you have any questions about that location, you can contact Deanna, for example. You'll see that you are collecting your summer phosphorus between September 19th and 23rd, and you'll be turning it in between 8 and noon on September 24th. So that's how you utilize these schedules, and you can look at the same. Chlorophyll is a little different because we have once a month for chlorophyll. I think I skipped that on the last slide. And you'll see that sample one you collect between May 10th through the 20th, and then it's typically the 10th through the 20th till that last sample, and that is sample number 5, and that is a little different. So it's not between the 10th and the 20th. So make sure to look at your schedule to make sure the timing is correct. The timing for phosphorus and chlorophyll are important. And if you deviate too far from this schedule, we'll have to either flag it or reject it. So it is important. And that's because of ecological reasons. We want to be consistent through the years so that we can compare apples to apples. And as we go further before or after, we may start to get away from being able to compare. So that's the purpose there. How do you get to those sampling schedules as well as a whole lot of other documents? You go to MiCorps.net, hover over lakes, go to CLMP documents, and then in CLMP documents, there's a whole bunch of things, and there are the schedules down there in that list. Just mentioning, so that sample drop-off is really important. There's a lot of bottles that move through around the state on those drop-off locations, and it's pretty fun that it all gets to us in time, all frozen, all nice, and then we process them, and then we all move them down to the Eagle laboratories to be analyzed. And so there's a lot of logistics happening there, and we thank you all for getting them all into one day so that we keep our quality of our data high. And now 8 to noon, that is a tight window. That's because of the mailing that is required to keep things frozen. If that date and time does not work for you, you can reach out to your drop-off location. So that's the contact that you'd see for your county, and they might be able to help you with that. They might say, oh, you can come the day before. We have freezer space, or whatever it might be. You also might want to coordinate with neighbors. So if you know that there are other CLMP volunteers near you, you might only have one person who can drive all the samples over. That's okay too. If you need help with that, because maybe you don't know who the CLMP volunteers are in other lakes, feel free to reach out to me, and I will coordinate people and get you the contacts that you need. For folks who collected spring phosphorus, those were sent, as you know, you dropped them off in June. Joe, Chelsea, and I processed those, and they are on their way and in the laboratory being analyzed now. So later in the summer, that data will be available. It gets into our database pretty quick, but I also send off an email to all of you so you can take a look at your lake and the results. And I make a fun map so you can see, at least in a coarse way, whoa, I'm hyper-eutrophic, or wow, other lakes around me, I'm better than other lakes around me, or whatever you'd like to look at there. So that's kind of fun. But that'll be coming later this summer. Moving on to our exotic aquatic plant watch and score the shore parameters. Some of you are already enrolled in those. And if you are feeling the urge or inspiration to do more this summer, you can, and are not enrolled, you can still enroll. These are the 2 parameters that you can enroll in throughout the summer months. They're not closed. So you'd go back into your account, you could go into choosing more parameters, and you can add them. And if you ever need any help with that, I'm happy to assist. Talking about the Exotic Aquatic Plant Watch, it is that, if you can recall, is the early detection survey for aquatic invasive plants. And there is a new invader. What we consider, as well as the the news out there, is we have a monster aquatic weed, the aquatic plant we didn't want here. This is a pretty terrible plant, never been found in Michigan until late last year, found in Berrien County. And so this is one of our plants that we look for in the Exotic Aquatic Plant Watch. Is one of 5 species we train you on to identify. And as you can see, it kind of looks somewhat familiar to other plants that are common in Michigan. And what we're looking for is a plant with whorled leaf arrangement. with 4 or more leaves coming out of a whorl. And you can see there's a lot of teeth going on here on this plant. So I just want to show you a little bit more about how to ID this plant, even if you are not part of the Exotic Aquatic Plant Watch. You are all on your lake many times throughout the summer. And so keeping an eye out for this plant and other invasive species, as well as just, hey, that looks different. I've never seen that before. Joe and I are here, and Tamara and Jean, we're here to help with that identification. So if you find a plant that looks abnormal, it could be an invasive species, so we're happy to look at a picture from you on that. But back to hydrilla. So what we're looking for is a plant with 4 to 8 leaves around the stem. Then what we're looking for is when we look at the teeth, when we look at the leaves, there's teeth on the edge. And on some plants, you'll actually even see teeth on the underside of the leaf coming out of the midvein. That's not always the case, but that is often the case. So I have a little quiz for all of you. Is this hydrilla? If you want to either blurt it out or put it in comments or in the chat. There we go. Not comments, chat. Please, I'll hold and see what you all think. And if you think it is or is not, you can give a little say of why. John, I think your microphone is a little strange. Your voice is very high. Like the Elvin and the Chipmunks high. That's great. So, yes, this is not, sorry, no, this is not hydrilla. And I see you all answering that. That's great. There are not enough leaves. This has 3 leaves per whorl here. And also there's a lack of obvious teeth. This is our native plant that's very common called Elodea. Oh, Sherry, you're not seeing an example.
I'll chat a suggestion to her.
Thank you. Everyone else can see it, correct? Okay, good. I see John, you're shaking your head. Yes. This is Elodea or waterweed, very common, and is a big lookalike to hydrilla. But so if you see it and you just want to do a quick double check, look for teeth, look for more than 3 leaves per whorl. When you are doing the plant watch, if you are signed up for the plant watch or you are going to sign up for it, we do really need a picture of any of the invasive species you find. So if you do find Eurasian water milfoil in your surveys, please take at least one picture, ID it nicely. This is the laminated sheet that we hand out to people signed up for the plant watch. You can put the plant out with all the characters. By the way, this is Eurasian milfoil here. And we use that to verify your identifications and have it archived. So we have the images. And then for my final slide before handing it off to Joe, I just wanted to give a plug for Score the Shore. This is depending on the size of your lake, it can take quite a bit of time if it's large, and if you have a small lake, it's short. But it's a key parameter because what has happened on our lakes through time is our lake shorelines do change dramatically. And here's a picture of Portage Lake in Livingston County. That's in Livingston, Washtenaw County, just to show you this is a very dramatic change that has happened from 1938 to more of today. And I hope our shorelines aren't changing like this fast anymore, but they are changing for the better and for the worse. So here's the overlay. And you can see while the natural shoreline has persisted in part of the lake in the more wetland, there have been full out dredging and homes put every 50 feet or so. So Score the Shore is a great parameter that collects kind of baseline conditions on your lake. And some of our lakes have done this now years ago, and they put forth a campaign to improve their shorelines. And they are now doing a score the shore again after many efforts. So the hope is that they're going to detect a positive change in their shoreline conditions. Joe, I'll let you take the podium.
Sure, thanks. So yeah, moving on from some of the parameters, I want to spend a little time talking about working with other people on your lake and also some of the resources on our MiCorps website that you might not know about or might not remember. So one thing that's really important is that in about 4 years ago, when we switched to fully online enrollment, we developed two different roles that people can serve as volunteers. And we've always had this in the CLMP, but now it's a little more formalized. We have lead volunteers and we have assisting volunteers. The lead volunteer is the person who's responsible for enrolling the lake, making sure that fees get paid, and they're the person who gets the communications from us. If Jean is sending out phosphorus bottles, they go to the lead volunteer. If we send out an email with reminders, those are going to the lead volunteers. However, there can be a lot more people helping out with monitoring a particular lake, and everyone else signs up as an assisting volunteer. And that's important. It's important for people who are helping you out, if you're the lead volunteer, to sign up as an assisting volunteer. And you can work with your volunteers to make sure they're doing that. And there's a couple of reasons why it's important. One of the reasons is that it allows us to acknowledge the great work that they're doing and their contribution to the program. It also allows the assistant volunteer to view information about the program and sign a liability waiver, which is also important so you understand the minor risks that are involved with participating in the program. And then finally, from a practical standpoint, it allows access for the assisting volunteers to help with data entry. If someone other than the lead volunteer wants to go into the database and enter your data for the year, they have to be signed up for your lake to do that. Otherwise, they won't be able to find the lake in the website and in the database. So those things are very important. And another thing that's really important is that lead volunteers, if you have people assisting you, make sure that they're trained and that you share any information about the program that's relevant with them, because they're not necessarily and probably not getting the emails that you're getting because you're the lead volunteer and you're our point of communication. And so if there's something important, a reminder about sampling or a turn-in date or things like that, it's important for you to stay in touch with your assisting volunteers to make sure they're in the loop on that. The other thing that's important for lead volunteers to do is if you have anyone else assisting you is make sure they get the training that they need. As you know, we offer a lot of different training options, in-person options, always at the Michigan Lakes and Streams Association conference every year. This year it was in Muskegon. Next year it will also be in Muskegon. We also offer occasional other in-person opportunities for training. We did one in the UP this spring. And we also offer online training. And those online trainings are even recorded. So if an assisting volunteer can't make it when it's a live training, they can watch the recorded presentations. We've got a picture on the screen here that show you that we offer recorded presentations and a PDF copy of all the slides. So anyone can go back and review the videos, review the slide decks, and make sure that you're doing everything up to par, because we want to make sure we have high quality data. Something that we noticed this spring is that nearly every sample we had to reject was something collected by an assisting volunteer. And what that tells us is that not all of our assisting volunteers are getting the training or the resources that they need. So if you're a lead volunteer and you've got some folks helping you out, just make sure that they're comfortable with the protocols, maybe go out on the lake with them the first time, check in with them to make sure everything's making sense. And if you get a rejection notice, make sure you talk with your assisting volunteers about that too. Next slide will show if you are an assisting volunteer. Another thing that we're seeing is a lot of people who are assisting volunteers do create an account on our website, which is great, but that y'all don't always add your lake to your account. So we don't know what lake you're working on, and you have to do that if you want to be able to enter data for your lake, or just generally want us to know that you're helping on a particular lake. So on our website and under Become a Volunteer, there's a place to click to enroll. And once you've created your account, you'll actually have to sign back in with your username and password and do what the red arrow is showing you and add your lakes to your account. And it's pretty straightforward. You click that Start Here button and it will let you search for your lake in a number of ways. You can just type in the name of your lake, or if you know the MiCorps field ID number for your lake, you can click on that and enter that in. You can search on a map. There's a lot of ways to do that. And all you have to do is say, yep, that's my lake. And then that will let us know what lake you're working on. So if you're an assisting volunteer, make sure you've done that. If you're a lead volunteer that has assistance, check with them to make sure they've done that. And that way we'll know who all is involved with your lake. Another important thing that we have on the website that assisting volunteers can help with if they create an account and choose their lake. You can enter your data. So getting your data into the database moves things along really quickly. We ask volunteers to enter their data into the database by October 31st. That's the volunteer deadline. If you don't do it by then, we go through and we'll check and see what data is missing from the database, and we will enter it from the data forms that you send in to us. Of course, that takes a while. And so the more volunteers that enter their own data, the faster that process happens, the faster your data is in the website for you to go look at, for researchers to be able to access. It's important. And so the more volunteers that help with that, the better. But if it's after October 31st, don't do it, because then what often happens is you enter it and we enter it, and then we have duplicate records in the website. So October 31st, November 1 is when we take over. So this slide just kind of walks you through the steps of entering data. So as you can see up in the upper left-hand corner, at the top of our website, you can find the data exchange. If you click on that, a menu will drop down and you can choose enter data. If you're not already logged into the system, it'll ask for your username and password. And then it will show a screen like you see in step 2, and you just click on the box that says lakes. Very simple. That'll take you to step 3, and you'll see a list of lakes that you are allowed to enter data for. For most of you, it'll just be one lake. So it's pretty easy. And just click on the underlying name of your lake. And that will get you to step 4, where you can actually enter data for your lake. You'll see information about your lake at the top of the screen under lake site information. It's always good to glance at that and make sure it's the right lake. And then you can enter a new sample, and you just pick on the parameter you want to enter. So say you have Secchi disk data you want to enter, you just click on that blue Secchi button, and it'll take you to a screen where you can enter your Secchi data. You can also look up your data in our database. We get a lot of questions about this. I think folks often forget that you always have access to all the data that's ever been collected on your lake and any other lake in the program. And that's by going to that same data exchange menu shown in step 1, but instead click on view data. You don't have to log in with a username or password to see the data. And that will take you to what you see on the right-hand side there in step 2, what we say is our MiCorps Data Exchange Network. And you can look and search by streams or lakes. For our program, we'd click on lakes, and then you could narrow your search. Most people just click on name because they want to search by a certain lake name, but you can also look at all the lakes in a certain county, for example. So in here, we typed in the word Badger for Badger Lake. Once that goes in, click it. And then you can pick what dates, what parameters you want to look at. In this case, we've said all the dates starting back in 1970s, all the way till, well, last year. And then click on Secchi disk, and then click view results, and you will get all of the Secchi data for that lake. Here's an example of current data that's being entered. This is Secchi data again for a number of lakes. And what you can see there, for example, at the very top, we've got Hubbard Lake in Alcona County. They've been entering their data right along. They have a measurement in there from July 12th. So just a couple of weeks ago, they were out on the lake, and they've been entering their data as they go along. And you can see some other lakes there on the screen too that have been entering their data. And you can see some summary data right there. You can see the date, the time, the actual Secchi depth measurement, 20.5 feet, nice and clear on Hubbard Lake. It was a cloudy day. If you click on view graph, you can see a whole graph of data over time. If you click on the underlying date there, it would show you all the details of that measurement. So there's a ton of information there. And another thing I'll point out before we move on is if you look at the very top of that screen, you can see a button to download in Excel. If you're somebody who likes to play around with data and spreadsheets on your own computer, you can download the data that were the results of your search and, make graphs, do calculations, whatever you want to do on your own computer, you can download the data as well. All right. Those are reminders about the website, enrollment, data, the database, that kind of thing. Now we want to talk about how to make sure your data actually get into the database, that we don't have to reject them, that we don't have problems. So I'm just going to show a few examples of some of the mistakes we've seen in the past, just to remind you of good sampling procedure, because we want to have the best possible data. Keep your sample clean. And when we say that, we talk about not touching the inside of containers, also using the proper containers. If you're doing phosphorus, we send you sterile bottles to use to collect that water and for analysis. And so if you don't have the bottles, if you lose your bottles, contact us and we'll send you replacement bottles. Don't get creative with a container you have around the house. This is an actual photo of a water sample sent to us in a Parmesan cheese container. As you can imagine, we had to throw that out. We can't use that for chemical analysis. We also sometimes see, more often than we'd like, examples like this, a phosphorus bottle where someone filled out the label, but they didn't use a waterproof pen or marker to fill it out. And so by the time it gets to us, it's started to thaw a little bit, the bottle is sweating, it gets wet, and all the information has wiped off the label. And so we have to do some detective work to try and figure out what lake this is from, when it was sampled, that kind of thing. So, you can always fill out your label even back home before you go out on the lake to make sure it's nice and dry. But by using something like a Sharpie or other waterproof pen, it works really well. And then just a little reminder on there, if you didn't catch it when Eric mentioned before, if you haven't got your summer phosphorus bottles yet and you're expecting them, they will be coming to you very soon. Chlorophyll, a few reminders about chlorophyll, because chlorophyll has a number of steps. There's a number of times to make little mistakes or let mistakes sneak in. When you're doing the filtration, make sure that when you're pushing that syringe and pushing the water through the filter, not to push too hard. If it's really hard to get the sample through the filter, we'd rather have you stop and just record on the data sheet the volume of water you were able to filter, rather than really pushing hard, because you want a rapid drip rate. You don't want that water jetting out of that syringe, because if it's coming out that hard, it may rip the filter. And some of you may have experienced that. You open up your filter holder and there's a shredded filter inside, and that kind of ruins your sample. So we don't want that to happen. Slow down the squeeze, make it a rapid drip rate, like that, and you'll be in great shape. All right, another mistake that we do sometimes see is with the choice of the filter that you're using. On the screen there, you can see an example of a package of filters that we provide with the chlorophyll sampling kit. The filter is the white thing, not the blue thing. All right, I know it can be tricky because you see the blue separator sheets that look like tissue paper, and those look like a filter because you can kind of see through them, but those are not. They're almost like a wax paper, and although you will be able to push a little water through them, they are not the filter that you need to use. Use those white, they almost look like little white plastic discs. They look solid, but trust us, they have holes in them. They're going to work great. So use the white filters. And what happens if you use those separator sheets that usually look kind of bluish, the laboratory, when they're going to do analysis, they add chemicals that will dissolve a filter, and they can make their analysis of how much chlorophyll is in there. Their chemical test does not dissolve the separator sheets, and so they get debris in the machine. It messes up the analysis, and the lab catches that. And then when we get the results back from the lab, they tell us, it looks like they used a separator sheet because we got a bad reading. So make sure to look for those white filters and use only those. And then finally, aluminum foil, super important. We all know chlorophyll is what is involved with photosynthesis. It changes, it breaks down when it's exposed to light. And that's why we insist that chlorophyll samples, when you're done filtering them, you put them in their vial, they're ready to go, wrap those vials in foil to keep them nice and dark. It breaks our heart when we open up a bag and find sample vials without any foil, because we know we have to throw them out. And so make sure that that foil is on there and keeping everything nice and dark. It's unnecessary to wrap phosphorus bottles in foil. Sometimes we get that. It doesn't hurt anything, and it just costs you some extra foil, but you don't need to do that. Phosphorus is stable, but the chlorophyll needs to be wrapped in foil. All right, data forms, also very important. We use the data forms for checking and double checking the work that you have done. And so the information that's included on the data forms is really critical for our program. So make sure that you fill out all the blanks on your data forms. You can keep using for chlorophyll, keep using the same data sheet. There's no reason to cut it into strips. Don't cut up your data form. Keep using that same data form throughout the summer. Fill out all the questions to the best of your knowledge. And then be sure to do both sides. Your data form has a second page in every case for every parameter. There's at least one more page. And so on the top, you can see there filled out the lake name, county, and field ID number. We want that repeated on the back because eventually all these forms get scanned. And if pages get separated, we need to know how to reassociate those pages. So write your lake name, county, and field number on the top. We ask you to fill in the surface area of your lake and then the map. The map is so important. And I know we've heard from volunteers before, like, oh, it's such a pain. I have to draw this map over and over and over and over again. Yep, you kind of do. This is really important for us to be able to go back, especially through time, and make sure volunteers have been collecting their samples from the same spot in the lake over time. Very important. The map does not have to be super detailed. Sometimes I see a map that's just kind of like an oval with an X that kind of gives us an idea. Even that is helpful. And if this is difficult for you or it seems to be taking up a lot of time, another thing you can do is just attach a map. Maybe you make a copy of a map from an atlas or something and you draw in where you sampled. That's fine too. If you don't want to use the box and draw it yourself, attach a map, just staple it with your data sheet, and that's fine too. But Eric was just telling me earlier this week, you wouldn't believe the number of times I've had to look at people's maps this year. So the maps are really important. And, you know, when we are looking for information about where samples have been collected and we grab the data sheet and go, we'll be able to answer the question, and we look and the map is not there. Now what do we do, right? So that map is really important. So I appreciate y'all doing it. Dissolved oxygen. For those of you who are doing dissolved oxygen, just a few reminders. It's always best practice to turn your meter on at least 15 minutes before you're going to actually calibrate and get started doing your monitoring. Just lets the meter warm up, and it tends to make calibration and measurement go a lot more smoothly, and you get less variation in the reading on the screen. When you're storing it, make sure to keep the little sponge that's in that chamber that goes over the probe, keep that damp, but not in like standing water. So just moisten it. Tap water is fine. Keep it wet, but don't like fill the whole chamber with water. When you go to make your readings, make sure the meter is set to read in milligrams per liter and not in percent saturation. You can toggle between the two on your meter, and make sure your temperature is reading in degrees Celsius and not in Fahrenheit. And then one other thing that we do sometimes see, especially when the meters get returned to us at the end of the season, is that they've been put away wet. Those cases that we give you, especially the hard cases, I know some of them have cloth cases, but especially the hard cases are absolutely airtight. So any moisture that's in there is going to stay in there. And poor Tamara, sometimes she gets those meters back at the end of the season, opens them up, and they're totally moldy inside. And so make sure that you let things dry out before you zip them up or shut that case for next use. All right, when you're out actually taking the readings, another thing to think about is that it's important to stay put, anchor your sailboat when you're out there doing dissolved oxygen readings. I'm guessing you're probably not in a sailboat for your readings, but just make sure you're anchored. It's good to anchor a little bit before you get to your spot and let your boat drift over the site and just sit nice and still, because as you know, as you're lowering that probe down in, if your boat is moving, your probe is not going to be going straight up and down. It's going to be on an angle, and we want a profile that's straight up and down. So get yourself as stable as possible before you start. Make sure to go down within what, Eric, I think we say 2 feet of the bottom with your dissolved oxygen reading. You don't want the probe to hit the lake bottom and stir up sediment and stuff, but you know, measure right down to that about a couple feet above the bottom. Make sure you get all the way down there and take those measurements. Some people stop way short, and that loses some important information about oxygen levels in your lake, because the first place we tend to see oxygen loss is at the very bottom. So go down down as deep as you can without hitting the bottom, again, within about 2 feet. So check the depth. Don't assume you know what the depth is where you start. Drop your anchor down or use your depth finder or something to find out where you're sitting at as far as depth, and then begin your measurements. All right. Another reminder, we'll go all the way back to the basics here. Secchi disc. So here's a quick question that you could type your answer in the chat. From where do you take that measurement of your Secchi depth? Where do you read that tape? Do you measure at the top edge of your boat and read the tape right there? Or do you go down to the top of the water and record the measurement right there? A or B? I like Julie's emphatic answer there. Yes, you guys are right. Take it from the water surface. We do see people. Sometimes we'll go out in the field with folks and they're taking the measurement and they're like, oh, well, the reading at my hand is 20 feet, so I'll record 20 feet. No, no, no. Let's use our common sense a little bit. We're measuring from the top of the surface. We're trying to see from the water surface down how clear the water is. I've got a question there from Jim. What about curve in the tape? Yep, that can happen, especially if it's a little breezy when you're out taking your measurement. You look down and you can tell that your Secchi disc is not dropped straight down. Your boat's moving, or the wind, or there's a current in the water, any of those kinds of things. We suggest do the best you can. You want to try and go out in a calm time on your lake, but midday can be a little breezy. So in that case, again, do the best you can. If it's a little bit off, that's fine. We only measure to the nearest half foot or 6 inches. So, there's some room for a little bit of inaccuracy there. That's totally fine. And then one other question, a quick quiz, I'll say, what else is wrong in this picture? What else is this volunteer maybe doing wrong that doesn't comply with our training?
Sunglasses.
There it is, Jim. You're on the ball. The volunteer is wearing sunglasses, and we ask you to not wear sunglasses when you're doing your Secchi disc measurement, because sunglasses, especially polarized sunglasses, really increase your ability to see down into the water. And we want to be consistent from measurement to measurement. So we don't know if you would always have sunglasses. So instead we say never use sunglasses. You can put them back on when you're done reading, but when you're doing your reading, make sure to take your sunglasses off. Very good. All right. Another reminder, if you need a refresher on any of this, our website has videos of the training of all of these parameters. You go to the website, click on lakes, and then in that drop-down menu, you'll see lake training. Click on that. And if you scroll down, you'll see the recorded training video links. And as I mentioned, there's the videos. There's also copies of all of our slide decks. There's even these Midsummer check-in recordings. We put those there. We want you guys to have access to all the tools you need. And if you like a video better, we have videos. If you like to read the written protocol, we have those. If you like to look through a slide deck on your own, we have those too. We want to give you all the tools that you need. So those are all available on our website, and we update them every year. All right, we've pretty much come to the end, but there's one quick reminder we wanted to share with everyone that's on here. We hold an annual MiCorps conference every year for all of our lake and stream monitoring volunteers. And this year, we have the opportunity to meet jointly with the Michigan Inland Lakes Partnership. And that event is happening October 2 through 4 in Grand Rapids at the Sheraton Grand Rapids Airport. This is a event that's open to anybody interested in the health of Michigan's lakes and streams. We have already opened registration. We'll put the link for that in the chat here in a minute. You can see the draft agenda, all the great topics. There's going to be a whole set of topics that are specifically developed for our volunteers. So we hope you'll check that out. Erick and I will be giving some presentations about what we're learning from CLMP lake data, for example. There's going to be a lot of really great events going on, a lot of speakers from the DNR and research universities, grad students doing great work on our lakes and streams and so forth. So we hope you can join us. And so mark your calendar, save the date now, October 2 through 4 in Grand Rapids, and register today if you're excited about joining us. All right, that's our last slide. So, here we are. Here's contact information for us. Eric and I, of course, Jean Roth, who's on today, she's the one who mails you stuff and helps you out with some of your registration information. So you can always reach out to Jean. Tamara Lipsy with Eagle, who wasn't able to join us today because she's out in the field, but she's open to help out as well. And then if you're not sure who to ask, we have a general email address, MiCorps@msu.edu. You can email that, and a bunch of us have access to that account. We check it every day. So if you have questions for us, we are here for you. And with that, I think we can open it up. If anybody here has questions, you can unmute yourself, ask your questions, type them into the chat if you'd rather do that. We've got, till 11 o'clock here to answer any questions you may have. We can also go back to any of the slides that we already showed. So yeah, we'll open up to the group now.
John, I see that you unmuted, but we can't hear you.
Eric, this is Jim Ayers. I have just a quick question, and I don't even know if this is allowed per your protocol, but I'm at Crystal Lake in Montcalm County. And I'm curious if there's a way for me to just be able to contact any volunteers in partner lakes that are really close to me or relatively close to me. Reason being is in that county, we turn in at the state building in Grand Rapids, and it happens to be about a 2-minute walk from where I live. I live right down GR, and like my predecessor at Crystal Lake was driving from the Detroit area to turn this stuff in. I'm just thinking if I could contact people, if they wanted to if it's easy for them to get me their samples, I could turn them in for them because it's super convenient for me.
Yeah, so what I can do, Jim, I will, with your permission, I'll send the CLMP, other CLMP volunteers within Montcalm County, your name and contact information. So that phone number and email, is that okay?
Yeah, that'd be great. Thank you very much.
And then they'll respond with saying, wow, great opportunity. Let's do something.
Okay, thank you.
And I've noted it, so I'll get that out. Now I'm looking at so I'll read Sue's, or Joe, have you answered that or can I read it?
I have not answered Sue's because it was more detailed.
I will read it and then we'll go from there. I'll read it out loud. Silver Lake, Dexter Township was widely treated for the first time this spring for milfoil using diquat and Procellacor. Due to that treatment, what changes would you anticipate in water quality and native plants as the year progresses? So that's the first question. So maybe we'll answer that one first, and then we'll dive in. Well, so great. The question would be what we would hope when we do management of invasive plants is that we will see a lower amount of the invasive plant, but a true success is that we see native plants start taking their place. And so that's what we would expect with a fully good treatment. The one thing is sometimes native aquatic plants may not grow quickly into those areas. So it would be interesting to see what year 2 will bring kind of thing and into the future. These treatments will not get rid of all of them, all of those invasive plants. So, being aware of that is important. So that's for the plants. For water quality, it would be interesting how much of the milfoil and starry stonewort is impacted. So if you had large patches of starry stonewort and Eurasian milfoil, and there was a very successful treatment where a lot of it was reduced, there could be some downsides initially. Aquatic plants are very important to lakes, and even invasive plants have some of those benefits. Starry stonewort pulls nutrients from the water column of your lake and so that's a mechanism to keep nutrients away from floating algae called phytoplankton. And so if you have less of it, and they say the native plants haven't come back yet, there might be some impact there. What would be interesting, Sue, is your Secudus data. It'd be interesting to see if it's after this treatment for the full year is different from the prior year. So what's great is that you have a handful of years prior to this, so we can look at the pattern and see if there is some difference. Oh, did I hit everything? Do you
Yeah. I mean, the other thing that I'd mention, not as much with Priscillacor as with Diquat, is that Diquat in particular is not selective. It kills everything. And so, not knowing right offhand the distribution of native plants in your lake, that's something that needs to be used with care by the applicator, because it can definitely have impact on desirable native plants as well as the target invaders. So something to just kind of keep an eye on. There's pretty much always kind of collateral damage when invasive plants are treated, and depending on how aggressively they are, that can be pretty significant. So that's something to keep an eye on too, because obviously we don't want to wipe out all the plants in the lake, native plants. And as Erick even suggested, even invasive plants can have some ecosystem benefit.
And so keeping an eye on the diversity of native plants coming back will be important, because we would like to see more. We don't want to see in the littoral zone, the shallow part of your lake, there are likely to be plants. And so if there are no plants growing after treatment, that would be, something to look into the future. Okay, number 2, our starry stonewort cannot be treated with copper due to a resident endangered mussel. What alternative is effective for a widespread presence of starry stonewort? Well, that's unfortunate. It's neat that you have an endangered mussel. And that's pretty cool, especially if it's still a resident there. And it'd be neat because that mussel, that's something that the lake community can get around in saying like, wow, we have an endangered mussel. That's something that maybe we can help the habitat for, and all those sorts of things. Now, as you mentioned, copper now cannot be used on this lake because of that mussel. By the way, that's because copper herbicides may have some negative consequences to our benthic invertebrates and our mussels. And so that's why. So there's a reason behind the regulation, and people are looking into that question and trying to find answers because it's complicated. But other alternatives on a widespread presence of starry stonewort, not that I'm aware of currently. Starry stonewort is a problem even when using copper algicides. It's a really aggressive plant that's pretty hard to get rid of and control. On small patches, there's diver-assisted suction harvesting. But even that, if it's a very dense patch, that's expensive and a lot of work. You would have to be very, you'd have to prioritize, because you couldn't do huge patches. You would have to say, well, just right here because it's an important spawning area for bluegill, for example, just to throw out something like that. Joe, anything to add on do you know any other treatments that you've heard of currently?
Yeah. No, that's pretty much it. Again, that's why with lakes that are not aware of starry stonewort in their lake, it's good to keep an eye out for it and do exotic plant watch so they can see and catch it early if they can. When the horse is already out of the barn, the treatment options are really quite limited.
And I think Joe already answered it, but it's always nice to respond here. Do we have to turn in data if we entered it all online? Yes. It's great to have those records. I've used our scanned data sheets in the past to figure out problems that might pop up in our database. And it's been wonderful to have those original data sheets. And as I can see, like, oh, look, that's not a 9, it's a 7. Or wow, things just are when you're entering data, some things can happen every once in a while. And it's confusing to find out, but when you look at the original data sheet, it becomes clear, and we can move forward and fix and keep the quality of data high.
Right. Yeah. And then like when you enter data, that map isn't there, right? There's no way to enter that information when you do your data entry, but with the copies of the paper data sheet, we'll be able to look at maps. And so that those alone are worth the value of sending them to us. And as I put in the text, you can send a hard copy to us, or you can, scan or take photos of your data sheets and email them to us. And those instructions are right on the data sheets.
Okay, well, I'm new as a volunteer for Cobb Lake. And this year we had a 1.25 acre spot with the starry stonewort, but it was in deep water. And you were talking about that copper, which we did treat it with that. And we saw very little effect, but we didn't check it till a good month after the treatment was done. Now, you really shouldn't stir that up and like check it a lot, correct? Because if I remember correctly, I thought I was told that's one of those is that, you know, it can just spread so horribly and quickly. So how often should you be checking a spot like that so that I'm not tearing it up and then helping it spread itself, you know, how am I supposed to do that?
All good.
Yeah.
Joe, do you want to take it? Do you want me to take it?
I can start.
Yeah.
So actually, starry stonewort isn't as bad as spreading by fragmentation as something like Eurasian water milfoil is.
Okay.
So by, you know, throwing a rake into the bed or doing that kind of thing and looking is not going to be a huge issue. I think the monitoring value outweighs any risk of spread. Anything that you bring up onto your boat to look at, I would recommend having a trash bag on your boat so then you can just dispose it. Like, don't toss it back into the lake where it might float off into another part of the lake. But yeah, you don't have to be as worried about fragmentation spread with starry stonewort as you do with some of the other plants.
All right, wonderful. And then the last thing is there another chemical that can be used instead of that copper? Because again, I'm new, so I don't know if we have any, you know, snails or anything that I got to worry about that maybe, you know, could be affected by that copper, or is that really the only thing that we have as an option for the stony stonewort?
Some of the other, you know, there's other herbicides, like we mentioned diquat before, that's kind of a non-selective killer of plants and algae. So sometimes that's been used. There's another one called endothol, but they also, it's both of those, starry stonewort's hard to treat. One of the issues is that it's so thick and dense that the herbicide applicators that I've talked to, you know, they're working on different application methods to try and improve the effectiveness, because what often happens, it's so dense, they apply stuff and it only kills the top layer. It like gives it a haircut, they said, you know, it doesn't get down to the bottom because the herbicide just sits there on the top. And so, you know, they'll often use tubes to kind of funnel it down in or chill it so it'll sink. They try different things to do that. But, you know, there are some other options out there, but I have yet to hear about really great success with any of them, unfortunately. One of the good things is, you know, we do see these instances like you're talking about where you're not really seeing it in the shallows, you're just seeing it in the really deep water. And that is not necessarily a terrible thing, right? Maybe it'll stay put. Keeping monitoring will be important. And if you're already working with a lake management company, they can help you with that too.
Oh, okay. Great. Thank you.
Yeah, and I would say, you know, people who are tapped into what different applicators are doing and their success would be Eagle Aquatic Nuisance Control. So Eagle is the permitting agency, and Aquatic Nuisance Control, or ANC, are the ones that administer the treatment for aquatic plants. And I'll look that up when I'm done talking.
I'm on it.
Okay, Joe, again. And what's great is they do have a table on that webpage that shows like who is available for a particular day, because they're very busy. There's only a select few of them that are doing statewide stuff, but they have people on call every day, so you could give them an actual call.
All right, perfect.
Talk about your scenario.
All right, great. Thank you.
Yeah, and the folks over there are great at the Aquatic Nuisance Control Program. You know, they want to educate folks and share the best possible information. And, you know, just because you're calling a government agency doesn't mean, you know, that you're obligating yourself to anything. They're really great educators. We work with them closely. We go out and do field sampling with them. They're really knowledgeable, more than we are, right? We always refer because we know that they do the research. They stay on top of new innovations, what's successful, and they know way more about aquatic plant treatment in Michigan than we do.
Awesome. All right. Thank you.
And we'll note, I think, you know, like something with what's great, the CLMP, we're tapped into all of these different folks, and there is a lot of research that is happening on plant management, specifically starry stonewort in Wisconsin and Minnesota and elsewhere. And so, if there's new innovations, that's something about you might see that in an email if there's some really good stuff that comes out.
I saw Julie wrote a question in the chat. How important is it to try and figure out the deepest part of our lake if we're not in any other system? And I would say, I'm interpreting your question, in any other system. Does that mean your lake isn't connected to any other lake, or does that mean there aren't any maps that tell you where the deepest part is? I'll answer both. So if you don't have information like a map or something that tells you where the deepest part of your lake is, it's still valuable. The deepest part of your lake is where we ask you to do your Secchi measurements, your total phosphorus bottle collection, your chlorophyll water sample collection, dissolved oxygen monitoring. The deepest part of your lake is the most representative of the conditions of your lake as a whole. And so that's where we want you to be collecting data. If you're closer to shore in the shallows, other things could be influencing it. You could have local effects that we don't want to pick up on. We want that deep spot. And so you don't have to be 100% precise. Maybe your lake has a few spots that are all about 40 feet deep, and that's okay. You can pick one of those. But it is pretty important to work in the deepest part of your lake. And, you can do that. If you're not sure, talk to your neighbors. People who fish a lot often know that information. Somebody might have a depth finder on their boat, or you can go around and lower an anchor or a Secchi disc in some spots and kind of narrow it down. But we can help you look for map resources that might help you on that. And so it's fairly important. So we encourage you to find that deep spot for your sampling. If the detail on the question, oh, yep, Julie, thank you for clarifying. It was because you don't have maps. So if you want to reach out to us, if you haven't already, with what lake you're on, we might be able to help you out with that too, because we know some maps that are out there that aren't always easy to find.
Yeah, and I'll be putting in the Navionics link because that's been kind of a newer way to find a bunch of other lakes that maybe the DNR doesn't have depth maps for.
Right.
I have that right here. I'll be getting it here in a moment.
Awesome. Yeah, because many of you may have seen the DNR's depth maps that they have on their website, and they're great, but they're also limited, and they're also from the 30s and 40s for the most part. And so sometimes the information might look a little dated, and sometimes things can change. But yeah, Eric put the link to Navionics in the chat. That's a really cool. If you're into maps like I am, you could spend way more time than you ought to on this site, because there's a whole lot of bathymetry or lake depth information that you can find and just scroll around and find on there. A lot of that is data collected by people who have depth finders on their boats, and it records the depths as they're cruising around in the lake, and then it uploads to this website. So it's kind of crowdsourced information and current information on lake depths.
And I would just if the latitude and longitude of the deepest location are sampling point within the CLMP. So we have sampling locations for all of you, and it's associated with that field ID, so that specific number that is for your lake. If it is far off from what the deepest location is, or where you or others on your lake have been traditionally sampling from, please let me know. Let's start a conversation. And we, again, want the quality of data as high as possible. So if there's some deviation on where sampling should be occurring, I'm happy to have those conversations and work out what's happening and what should be done next.
All right, folks, we're at 11 o'clock. If any of you have lingering questions, we're happy to stick around for a few minutes. But for the rest of you, thank you so much for joining us today. It's always great to see names and faces. We've got some new folks and some old timers on here too, old time volunteers, not old folks. It's great to see you all here. Glad to hear that the sampling season is going forward smoothly for you. As we mentioned before, of course, this isn't your only chance to ask questions. We're here for you whenever you need us. Just let us know. Thank you so much for hanging around with us, and have a great rest of your summer.
Sure. Okay, so Julia, you asked about how do you check the coordinates. you can, let's see, what would be the easiest? If you go to view data, like we showed in the presentation, and then you choose your lake and Seki, there will be and actually maybe we could show it, I suppose. That might be helpful.
Yeah, go ahead. We got a few people hanging around, so you can show that if you want to.
If you all don't mind.
Thanks for the kind thank yous in the chat. We appreciate that.
And echoing Joe's, thank you all. It's so wonderful working with all of you, and and all of you giving your time for your lakes is really inspiring for me. I'm going to zoom in a little bit here so we're not. Okay, so this is the link that Joe showed. Name. We're going to go Silver Dexter because is Sue still on here? Perfect. That's the one. We're going to do Seki disk, and we're going to view results. So did people see I went through that fast? So I did lakes, the name. I typed in my name, which is for this Silver Dexter Township is the name of that one in our system. I'm going to look at all data forever from our system and click Seki. I'm going to do view results. So now this is all the data that's ever been collected on Silver for Seki disk. What you can do here is, so what's nice is now you can see the data, but if you click there, now there's the data for Seki disk, but here's the data for the lake. Joe mentioned you can quickly look at it to make sure you are looking at the right lake. And there is the latitude and longitude right there for your sampling location. So that is how you can look there. And we should change this storette ID on, that is your field ID. And so for Sue, it's 810669. That number is Silver Lake Dexter Township. And that's how we connect the dots throughout our database and make sure everything is where it needs to be.
Eric, can you hear me?
Yes.
Okay, so I know how to find, but you assigned that, right?
Yes.
So what I guess I'm asking is how I check, you said if it's off, how would I know if it's off?
Oh, that's where, like what Joe was mentioning. So if there is a map that is in existence and this is off, or if somebody comes up, or you might have some knowledge being like, that is not the deepest location. The deepest location's on the other side of the lake. That's what I mean there.
Oh, okay. Well, I think if this is Julie from Island Lake up in the UP, and we're a private lake, so mine is all from hearsay from all the people on the lake. And so maybe I'll just one day, like today, a nice day, I'll go out and just start dropping the Seki disc and see if we're close. Because I tried that Navitronics when I was in Crystal Falls at the thing. Somebody showed me that, and we're nowhere because we're just a private little lake with the same 11 camps that have all on here. So I'll just do some Seki disking today.
Yeah, there's a major need for lake topography, and like the DNR, for example, we've heard it through the years talking about trying to get more bathymetry data on bathymetry means lake topography data on our lakes.
Because I don't think anyone has a depth finder, so Seki will work.
Sounds like a good excuse to putter around on the lake today.
Exactly. Instead of killing barberry, I will do Seki disking.
There we go.
It's less thorny.
Less thorny. Thanks, you guys. Great presentation.
Thanks for joining
Julie.
us. It looks like we've gotten to the end of the questions. So this will be last call. Any other questions from anybody before we go?
John, are you able to, can we hear you now? I know you had a question early on.
Yeah, no, I switched cams. Can you hear me now?
Yeah.
Nice.
Okay, yeah, I'll throw that other webcam away. I can't remember what I was asking before. Sorry.
Oh. Well, nice to
I happen to know
hear.
I'm not in the deepest spot on my lake in Cass Lake, but it's a very deep lake. I'm measuring in 105 feet of water, and the deepest is 120, I think. But my oxygen thing only goes down to 95, so I can switch to the deep part. Should I be consistent for this year and stay where I am?
Stay where you're at. Is this What,
Cass Oakland, yeah.
Cass Oakland? I'll do a little investigation into that too. And
But
John, you might hear.
I know where the deepest spot is. I have a GPS and a depth finder on my boat, so I can find it. But I took over this year from somebody else, and this is the spot they had been using. So
Okay. Yes, stay consistent. So stay where you're at now because we don't want to change. But you might hear back. What's that?
Do I switch next year and get over the deep spot?
I'm going to do some investigation first,
Okay.
and then let's chat.
All right.
Because if Cass has 30 years of data on that one location, we would have to really think about moving it,
Yeah.
especially because 105 is close to the, like, it's not significantly different. If you were sampling in 40 feet, then the answer would be we would be changing it.
Okay.
Thanks.
All right, looks like we've done it. Thanks, everybody. As we said before, have a great summer. Reach out with us if you have any questions as you go through, and we'll get the recording of this up on the website in about a week or so. Happy sampling.
Thanks, everyone.